Orcs, Goblins, Humans, Tarks, Battle for Azeroth, World of Warcraft, and 8.1. It's coming down the pipe probably about 1 or 2 weeks after BlizzCon wraps up. The Arena World Championship is on, I think, this Monday and Tuesday as the upper and lower brackets are finished. And I feel like 8.1 is being really finished before all that's released. Wowhead has put together a very comprehensive list of changes here that are happening for each and every class, and it's going to change the game a lot. And I feel like 8.0, or the initial release of Battle for Azeroth, had a lot of bugs in it, let's be real. A lot of testing that could have happened. I think it frustrated a lot of people who played certain particular classes. I think it frustrated a lot of Warlocks because their representation in Arena is pretty poor. And there's only like one Warlock in the top 200 players. So Warlocks in general and the PvP aspect of the game are doing quite poorly. And it's probably because there was such a minimal amount of beta feedback that was taken. Now Blizzard is scrambling as they've lost probably 2 million subs after the game was first released, and now they're trying to give away free subscriptions, and they're really trying to take a lot of feedback because World of Warcraft is such a heavy cash cow due to the subscription model, a dated subscription model, I might add. And I'm going to give you some thoughts about 8.1, and we're going to talk about some changes. I'm going to talk about my opinions on upcoming Classic, because I did play Classic way back in the day when the game was first launched, and when I was just a little orc in my cave with a few of my clan mates, my clan orcs, and we played it back then. And I'll give you my opinion about it and why I think, I think Vanilla WoW will be a bad idea in this particular climate. But I want to talk about some of the changes that are coming down for 8.1 for Warlocks and Shamans, because those are the two classes I really kind of play. But I will be talking about Holy Paladins a little bit because I saw another video on it from another YouTuber's channel. I'll be linking all of this stuff in the description below so you can take a look. You can watch these games and be playing Shadowcleave here, where it's a Warlock, Affliction Warlock, where I play mostly with Battlefield Focus and Retaliatory Fury, just because it bumps my mastery up a lot. A Resto Shaman who drops Sky Fury when he can, mostly, and a lot of other utility that the Resto Shaman brings. And then also a Shadow Priest. And Shadow Priests are also getting major buffs. The Shadowplay comp, which I'm playing now in this video, is going to be very, very powerful, I think, in 8.1. But as they are becoming more powerful, Blizzard also tries to do a good job balancing their game around Arena so people aren't just getting stomped for the most part. But Warlocks, don't give up hope. So I think we're going to be a lot more powerful, and I'm hoping that even Demonology sees some more love, personally. So let's get into some of the changes for 8.1 for Warlocks. And I'm just going to be linking this stuff, kind of like screenshots as the video is rolling. So the first thing we got here is Soul Strike for Demonology Warlock is getting a significant buff. It's going to do shadow damage, which it does currently now. And that's on the same tier as where your Dreadstalkers hit the opponent, you do 20% increased Shadow Flame damage, which does not only shadow damage, but fire damage as well. And your Vile Fiend, when you summon that, is actually from the Fire School, which is one of the major benefits to playing Demonology, is when you do get inevitably pummeled, you actually do have a fallback school of magic to cast, just in case your initial cast gets pummeled or silenced. But Soul Strike is getting bumped up from 0.35 spell power to 0.5, which is really good, plus some versatility. This is one of the major changes coming up here. Curse of Weakness reduces the physical damage dealt by 25%, and that's the way it is right now. It's changing to attack power by 30%. So not only is it getting bumped by 5%, and also remember this is on a 20-second cooldown. So you have a 50% uptime, and the big difference is so like rogues and their poisons, you're affecting their attack power. We all know that rogues are very powerful counters to Warlocks, but also just the cleave comps are really powerful for Warlocks. So not only are they going to get a huge 30% nerf for 10 seconds, which is by a curse, and so it's going to be challenging it's just challenging for healers to curse this, especially if it's only up for 10 seconds, is they get a huge damage nerf. And this is actually going to affect hunters as well. So now when you're putting this Curse of Weakness on hunters, this means survival hunters and Beastmaster hunters are going to be nerfed also significantly when warlocks cast a spell. And this is for demonology. And I think this carries through to the other specs that can use Curse of Weakness. That's one of the major things I want to tell you guys about. For destruction, the current spec right now that someone recommended on my YouTube channel is the Bane of Havoc spec. It's where if you duplicate a spell, it boosts your intellect up. And what you do is you play Bane of Havoc. Everyone stands in your AoE area and you hit them all with like a Shadow Bolt or something. In Theorycraft, that works pretty good, but in a lot of battlegrounds and especially Arena, it doesn't work that well. He says, this guy told me he was like top damage in it. I tried this in like 4 or 5 battlegrounds and I could not get this the ease of this spec to work compared to Affliction, where you put a dot on someone and if they even run away from you, they eat a lot of damage. So, because they're usually not getting dispelled if they're running away. So let's take a look at some of the changes here for destruction. Backdraft. Conflagrate reduces the cast time of your next Incinerate cast bolt by 30%, maximum 2 charges. That's kind of the same thing. The cast time of your charges or Chaos Bolt, which is fine. Rain of Fire calls down a rain of Hellfire, dealing this amount of damage. It's changed the range, changed from 35 yards to 40-yard range. So they boosted the range on Rain of Fire from 35 to 40. That's fine. Infernal, summon Infernal here. Infernal will serve you for 30 seconds. 50% of spell power. It looks like it's 84 divided by 100 damage to all nearby enemies. It's kind of hard for me to read this because it's, again, so confusing. And it says Warlocks have a new destruction spell, and there's just like a placeholder in it. So there will be a new spell that destruction will get. Probably again. Again, they get Curse of Weakness. And PvP, they get Demon Armor. So Affliction and Destruction are getting this new Demon Armor in here. And what it will do is protects the caster, increasing your max health by 10%, increases armor by 125. It does take up a PvP slot. So in Destruction, I use like the Fell Fisher, Focus Chaos, and another one where it helps out with Chaos Bolt damage. Something like that. So you probably would have to give up like Fell Fisher, unfortunately, which is like the other one is that roots the opponent with Conflagrate. So you'd have to probably give up Fell Fisher or the root of the opponent. The root on the opponent is really powerful and it cannot be broken by any type of damage. And but Demon Armor is just incredibly powerful. And what this is good for really is protecting us against melee comps, right? This is going to help you have the increased health so you don't get zerged down, and also it's going to give you increased armor. So it's going to help us become tanky like Shadow Priest and other classes to help us out. Let's check out some of the general spells here for Warlocks here. Demonic Embrace. All Warlocks get a stamina increase by 10%. So not only are, like say, your Demon Armor, if you slot into that, is going to give you another 10% health, which I've heard is debatable about the health changes that you get affected by if someone, because it's all scaled down. I think they've changed that. I think that your raw damage isn't scaled anymore. I think it's actually like you do 5,000 damage to someone, you do 5,000 damage to someone. That makes a lot of sense. I think in open world PvP, it might be scaled, or in the duels, but it feels to me like it's balanced out towards battleground / arena. So like your stamina increase will have an effect. This is a new ability all Warlocks are getting. So think about it. All Warlocks, Affliction and Destruction Warlocks are going to have a 20% increase in HP pool. Very powerful. Casting Circle is getting a buff. The cast time is getting reduced from 1.5 to 0.5 seconds. So I talked about this in my previous video. I think this is actually going to be a much more powerful spell. What the problem is, well, first of all, if you think about Demon Armor and Curse of Weakness, and like say Casting Circle as your third perk against like the dreaded double melee comp, you're going to now be able to really have, first of all, a lot more survivability. You're not going to have Gateway Master because you're not going to be able to go through the gate. That's again a thing you can change. if you don't want Casting Circle. But Casting Circle allows you, it can still get pummeled and silenced, but that means the melee opponents are silencing you, and you have a lot of instant casts, so you're probably giving up like Curse of Shadows, which is a medium power curse in my opinion. It's not super powerful. It only synergizes, I think, with other dot classes like Moonkins or Shadow Priest. And I'm thinking more or less Shadow Priest because of the extra dot damage. And Curse of Shadows is only up 10 seconds on a 30-second cooldown, so it's not that. It's like I said, the power level is kind of low. But Casting Circle is on a, let's take a look, on a 1-minute cooldown, which allows you complete immunity for 8 seconds. But the problem is it's going to end your unending resolve. So you can't, when you pop your major wall cooldown, you're not going to do it, which is on I think a 3-minute cooldown, if I'm not mistaken. It's on a 2-minute, 3-minute cooldown. It's very long, especially compared to other classes. Their major wall ability is on such a large cooldown. So I think Casting Circle is actually pretty underrated. And I think a lot of times when I'm playing Warlock, especially in Arena, I get up to 5 shards. And I have no way, because I'm getting pummeled and silenced. Now you cast a quick Casting Circle, and you just drop damage on someone. So you can't get silenced at all. You can't get interrupted at all. Now you can still be suffered by stuns and so on, but that's okay. Let's take a look at some of the new Azerite traits. This looks like for Demonology. Baleful Evocation. We talked about this one in my last video. You generate 5 soul shards after your demonic tyrant. After summoning your demonic tyrant, you generate 5 soul shards. That doesn't seem that powerful. It seems okay. It's hard to judge this, how powerful it is. Again, I think Blizzard is moving away. They're going to introduce very powerful Azerite traits that's going to move you away from stacking to actually kind of spreading out amongst several very powerful Azerite traits. So also we have Chaos Shards for Destruction. Incinerate damage increased by 198, so that's that Fire and Brimstone spec, which kind of sucks. And then you fill up each soul shard. You have 5% to generate additional soul shard over 5 seconds. I don't know how powerful this is going to be because Cataclysm is just so powerful. Let me see, Incinerate, Immolate is the other one I'm thinking of. Pandemic Evocation. This is a really powerful one. I have not covered this in my video because it's a new one. Refreshing Corruption, Agony, or Siphon Life was less than 5 to 1,000 seconds remaining. So if it's under your pandemic window, will deal an additional 600 shadow damage and has a chance to grant you a soul shard. So it's very, very powerful. So with Warlocks, your dots are always rolling off. You recast this, you almost do additional 0.5% damage in spell damage. This might be the one you want to stack, especially for rock comps. You might want to stack this up just because it might give you a lot of soul shards too. And again, you pair it up with Casting Circle, you can actually drop a lot of soul shard damage. I think this is going to be a very powerful Azerite trait as you're refreshing. To explain a little bit what Pandemic is, as your dots are rolling off, if you refresh your dots near the expiration, if you use like add-ons like I've talked about in my previous videos, and you can check out the link for my add-on videos in the description where you can see how I use weak auras here, and when I see my dots actually dropping off, when I refresh those dots, that allows for an extra duration in the dot itself. So that could be quote-unquote a nerf, an indirect nerf when I cast it lower using this Azerite trait, but the increased damage and soul shard generation is too powerful. Because while UA itself has been, the dispelling effects and all that stuff seems to be very nerfed, I feel like the damage from UA is extremely high. Especially if you can get like 3 or 4 unstables on someone, it does serious damage. That's sort of like your go as a Warlock, I feel like. Because it's not only hard to get up to that, especially with the healers dispelling, but that is your go, and now you have an Azerite trait as a Affliction Warlock to generate additional shards. Again, hard to test out or just figure out like how good this is really going to be, but it's going to make it's a high skill Azerite trait too, because you have to pay attention. You can't just tab and then cast refresh your dots. You have to wait till they get to the pandemic window, which is also easier said than done, because sometimes you're in a CC and those dots fall off a lot. Here's another one that's very interesting. Terror of the Mind. You steal 770 health every 1 second from a target affected by your fear spell. This is very powerful. Fear targets can break very easily. I was doing more research into fear and what other high-skilled players thought about fear, especially Warlock fear. It's a very powerful single-target CC. It's not as powerful as, say, Polymorph, but it doesn't drop any damage when you cast Polymorph. And it could be used as an interrupt. It takes about 1.5 seconds to cast. But sometimes fear puts people out of position, like healers out of position. That's happened to me when I play Resto Shaman. Yes, we've lost Howl of Terror as Affliction Warlocks, just because they've been Affliction Warlocks have been trimmed back so much. We've lost so many base abilities. But this Terror of Mind ability seems very interesting, and again, it's another way to increase survivability as a Warlock. Imagine if you stack this and you're able to get a lot of fears off. I think this could be very good in 2s. But I think it's just going to be very good in general, because right now Warlocks have a very limited way to heal themselves. But you put a lot of fears on someone. It's RNG a little bit. Sometimes they break really easily. Sometimes they don't. Again, very interesting. Very who knows the power level of this. But you're basically regenerating about 1% health every second when someone's in a fear spell. Dreadful Calling. Unstable Affliction deals 82 times 4 damage. Casting Unstable Affliction reduces the Summon Dark Lair by 1 second. So they bump the Dreadful Calling ability, which is powerful. Call Dreadstalkers, Forbidden Knowledge. Oh, I did a video on this if you don't remember that, where I basically saw that in PvP, like Forbidden Knowledge just was terrible because it was just nerfed or scaled down, or it just didn't work or whatever because it was bugged. But the Call Dreadstalkers has a 30% chance. It does not stack. I think it'd be interesting if it did, if it stacked to a certain degree, to make your non-instant Demon Bolt deal 8,000 damage, additional damage. It's just too difficult to pull off. The thing is, fire mages are just way, way better because they can like channel spells. They can blink into people when they get out of range or blink around corners to catch them. Warlock's non-instant Demon Bolt is just extremely underpowered compared to just other classes. And slotting in Azerite gear to do additional damage, 10,000 damage, let's say you do 30,000 more damage. It's a non-instant spell with the most limited mobility class in the game. And this is a PvE thing, but I wouldn't really worry about it. We already talked about the nerf in one of my previous videos to Inevitable Demise. They're basically, you have to refresh them now with Agony, and it only is going to stack up to 50 times. So you're not going to probably have the super one-shot ability that you used to have, but you will be able to drain people more frequently. Again, I think they're nerfing sort of the meta perks for Warlocks and trying to push you into like the new ones like Pandemic Evocation. They're trying to just change the meta on you. Overall impressions of the Warlock changes that are coming out and some of these new Azerite traits, which I have not talked about on this channel. Very powerful. Warlocks have a very hard time in Arena against melee comps. We take like a lot of damage from like Demon Hunters, and Demon Hunters are getting nerfed, by the way. So changes are happening. We're moving away from like this Thug Cleave or whatever, the double DPS turbo cleaves, I think, to more of a rot meta, where Warlocks are going to be very powerful. So let's talk about I want to briefly talk about Holy Paladins. What's happening with Holy Paladins is they're getting, I'm not an expert in Holy Paladins, but I saw a video, I want to share it with you because I feel like the Shadow Cleave spec is going to be very powerful. Holy Paladins, as I believe the Shadow Cleave comps will become more prevalent in 8.1, I believe Holy Paladins are going to find a new calling. And Blizzard has noticed this, that they're going to buff Holy Paladins in general because they are very underrepresented. They're pretty powerful against rogues because they can cleanse the poisons off, That's sort of the counter pick in threes. But now they're going to be even more powerful because Shadow Cleave is going to be more powerful. Again, Curse of Weakness nerfing Warlock damage as they come out of the opener. I'm sorry, Rogue damage as they come out of the opener. So a few of the PvP talents I want to talk about with Holy Paladins briefly here. Cleanse the Weak. When you dispel an ally within your aura, which is like 10 yards, all allies within your aura are dispelled of the same effect. Healing allies with your Holy Light will cleanse all diseases and poisons from the target. Wow. Holy Paladins are going to just straight up shit on rogues, guys. If this is true. They're getting another ability. I probably haven't gotten to it yet, but they can increase their aura from like 10 yards to 40 yards. So now when they fight the Shadow Cleave comps, they can dispel everyone. Now, yes, they will get silenced, and they will eat all the UA damage and so forth, and the fears that normally are associated with the God comp. But I think a good Holy Paladin will still be able to endure it and do well. It's just a thing that you have to fight when you fight that. But it will nerf the damage so severely. We'll see how powerful it is, but I think it could be extremely powerful for Holy Paladins. Divine Favor, that changed the cooldown from 45 seconds down to 25 seconds. This is about Holy Light and Flashlight increased by 100%, cost no mana, and unable to be interrupted. Divine Vision increased the range of your aura by 30 yards, is what I was just talking about. In addition, all allies who are affected by your aura also gain a Shadow Resistance aura. Again, the Shadow Cleave comp. See, Blizzard is trying to balance their game out. They're in PTR, they're with a bunch of their gobos over there at the headquarters. They're testing all this stuff out, and they're like, oh my god, Warlocks are like way better now, and they're just crapping on everyone. We have to make a counter to this. So they're making Holy Paladins the counter to this rock, paper, scissors type matchup. Damage dealt from shadow damage over time area effect spells reduced by 15% to all allies within 40 yards. So you have Divine Vision plus Cleanse the Weak is going to be very powerful against Shadow Cleave, against Holy Paladins, which currently are not very represented in Arena. But again, with all the balance changes to Warlocks and everything like that, and Shadow Priest getting a major buff, there needs to be a healing class that can counter this. And by the way, I don't see any type of powerful changes like this to Resto Shamans. Pure of Heart. Whenever you and your allies within 20 yards are healed by any source, they are cleansed of one disease and poison effects, and it was removed. So they 2 for 1. They moved in Pure of Heart to Cleanse the Weak. They kind of, again, I think this is good. They're simplifying the game, removing some of the talents that don't need to be done. They need to do this for the entire game, by the way. You just need to make Warcraft in general easier to manage. You have so many cooldowns, so many abilities, and you could say, okay, well, that just increases the skill of the game. Well, kind of. I mean, but the thing is a lot of the abilities I feel like have a lot of overlap, and they don't really have like a defining characteristic. Like a certain heal from another heal doesn't really have like a defining power. You know, just a general complaint. So I just wanted to briefly talk about Holy Paladins that will be able to counter the Shadow Cleave comp. And also, since DKs are getting majorly buffed, again, I can't cover all these changes, but Blizzard is taking notice. Elemental Shaman's getting a major change. All the things that should have been in 8.0 on release, they just wanted to rush BFA's release. I think 8.1 is the actual true release of the game. Arena is already in a decent state, but now it's going to be even in a better state. 8.1 will be, I think, it's going to be amazing for World of Warcraft. So be patient, stick in there. Elemental's getting a big buff. One of the things is that they think of Shamans as sort of the class that is the lightning class, right? Well, the lightning class is going to get a big buff or whatever. So right now, an Elemental is doing pretty well, apparently, from what I'm following. I'm not a personal Elemental Shaman because I have a Warlock, right? I can play other classes. I probably would rather play like a Fire Mage because I can drop like huge bombs. But as Elemental does get a lot of loving, I know when I was reading the forums, a lot of Elemental Shamans were extremely disappointed in the way their class had turned out, and probably a lot of people unsubbed. And now, unfortunately, Blizzard is too late to react to really fix Elemental, and Elemental now probably will be on par or good again. For those people who did unsub, think about resubbing if you are an elemental shaman, because see how it turns out. Maybe watch some videos. I might play some elemental shaman if they're decent. I've just, from what I can tell from other players about how they've read, they're just, the skill to risk reward ratio is just too high right now. I want to just talk about one of the changes to enhancement shamans that also Tiggle talked about the other day. They're merging Ride the Lightning and Forked Lightning, basically two PvP talents which are required for enhancement shamans. They're just merging those two together. It is a nerf. They will not be able to proc together. Let me read this to you. So Ride the Lightning, Forked Lightning is getting merged into Ride the Lightning. Here's the new Ride the Lightning talent, PvP talent. If there's more than one enemy nearby within 8 yards, you cast Storm Strike. You also cast Chain Lightning on the target. Otherwise, you conjure 2 bolts of lightning up to the 2 furthest enemies within 40 yards, dealing 40% of their spell power damage. So unlike before where both would trigger and CCs could break, you could argue with this. That's true. I was thinking when I played with Demon Hunter, like his Imprison would break as I Storm Strike and the Chain Lightning, the Forked Lightning hits. Forked Lightning is amazingly overpowered. So if there are more than one enemy within 8 yards, you're going to just cast Chain Lightning, so your Lightning Bolt will hit them. But this will also allow for maybe something really powerful. We're going to talk about shamanism now, something interesting. This has to do with ancestral resonance. Okay, so this has gone under some changes in the PTR. It got a nerf, and now I think it's getting buffed again. So let's read this. While under the effects of heroism, your mastery is increased by 16% every second, stacking up to 20 times. So mastery is very important for enhancement shamans because it increases your Storm Strike procs, your major damage dealing attack when you're calling down like the lightning on someone. And also increases your wind free procs. Your spells and abilities have a chance to increase your mastery by 107 for 20 seconds. So just a single buff. It doesn't have a stacking buff anymore. Heroism duration is increased to 60 seconds. Wow. Very powerful. And Ancestral Resonance chance to activate this mastery buff for 107 is greatly increased during heroism. You have Shamanism as a PvP talent in Arena. Means enhancement shamans, essentially, the way I'm reading this, your Forked Lightning has been nerfed. And now, you're going to have 20% haste for 60 seconds. Because your shamanism, while you're casting heroism, maybe shamanism is buffed. Because you use Ancestral Resonance to increase this berserking ability to 60 seconds. I don't know, this needs to be confirmed. Shamanism is on a minute cooldown. The reason why this isn't as overpowered as you're thinking, now you do get the buff another cleave person, so your turbo, your warrior, and your other resto shaman that you're playing with in threes, you would be able to buff the other warrior with your shamanism. So you both have this godlike buff. You're just running around and you're popping it every minute, and this is your go. This can be dispelled, but they have to dispel it off of both of you. So that's difficult to do, especially if you play, say, with a Resto Druid, and he's putting all these hots on you. That also works pretty well with turbos. So you have a Resto Druid, Enhanced Shaman, and another melee person. I'm thinking like a warrior, which is kind of like the regular turbo comp. And you and the warrior just go ham, because the Resto Druid's rolling full hots on you or just hots on you, and it's impossible to purge your ancestral resonance off you. And I think this could be extremely powerful, but is it super powerful? No, because it can be dispelled. It can be purged. But it will put people on check to dispel. And Warlocks right now are playing with Grimoire of Sac, so they might have to start using the Observer to actually start to be able to do the dispelling and actively dispelling targets. I personally don't want to play with Grimoire of Sac, but I think it just does too much powerful as a Warlock. But what I'm trying to say is people need to dispel more. And this Ancestral Resonance is going to be a major issue. So even though if you hit someone with the huge curse of weakness on like an Enhanced Shaman, who can dispel curses, by the way, you are going to eat a ton of damage if you can't dispel them. These are like the major changes I just wanted to talk about in 8.1 coming up. I think this is going to be amazing. There's going to be a lot of awesome talents. The other enhancement talents, by the way, I talked about in my previous videos. Check them out if you want to. I don't really have anything else to say. I think 8.1 is going to be what 8.0 should have been. Because I feel like a lot of classes didn't get fully tested out, warlocks included, for like arena and PvP and stuff like that. Now in World PvP, not World PvP, but in, just to put it in perspective, the top RBG player in the world is a gnome warlock. He has a record of 220 and 1. So he's won 200 games and lost only 1 game. In arena, you're lucky to get a 50-60% win ratio, which goes to show you the skill level of RBGs is just much higher than it is for arena, because you have so many counters and group play in RBGs to make up for some of the counter comps or weak comps that you go against for RBGs. Interesting. So the top player PvP player in the world representing is a gnome warlock, even though he's a gnome and not an orc. God bless his soul. Vanilla WoW was special for its time, but that time was 15 years ago. If you think about back to 2005, there was no competition in the MMO genre. You had Ultima Online, which had already closed shop because of various reasons, and you had EverQuest. And World of Warcraft at that time was just far and away a better game. It was a way to play with your friends. You all went to a server. There was more of a personal feel to it. And then they created battle groups for convenience later and much later expansions. But people want to stick to the nostalgia of the past. And today is just a different day. The graphics for games like Black Desert Online are just far, far superior to World of Warcraft. And World of Warcraft has shown its age. And the world has simply moved on from games like Vanilla WoW. Will Vanilla WoW be somewhat successful? Probably. But it's a step in the it's a backward step for Blizzard, in my opinion. It's not a forward step. It's a step to look back in the past. It feels gimmicky, and it doesn't feel innovative or new. This is the main problem, and I think the developers, if you look at their faces as they're talking about Classic WoW, they agree with this completely. The reason why is probably the board on Blizzard. There used to be these private servers, and these private servers were packed. They had queue times for like 2 hours for people just to log in to play on these private servers. There's probably, I don't know how many players they could hold, but they need to hold like thousands of players, and I don't know how many of these private servers could hold. Blizzard saw this popularity in Vanilla WoW, and they said, let's just redo this for us, and we can make money on it. People will play Vanilla WoW for a nostalgic reason, but it's for the wrong reason. One thing I loved about Vanilla WoW, though, that I will say, is that it had a sense of community that the current Blizzard game lacks, because the current game is more modern. It's more for convenience. It's about the casual gamer who logs in for a few minutes a day, does a dungeon, logs out. The LFR type stuff. And Vanilla WoW, you actually had to ride to the dungeon. You had to form a raid, ride to the dungeon, and then clear it. It was much, much harder than like LFR, for instance. So like I'm thinking like Blackrock Depths, and when I leveled up my, you can play vanilla right now in the current game, guys. And nobody really does it because it's bad. Because the graphics are bad. Like they're extremely dated. Like you go through Eastern Plaguelands, it's terrible. Like, and the graphics are god awful. I think it's a step in the wrong direction. What I think Blizzard should do, and I'll just say this is really a topic for a whole other video, is Blizzard should scrap the current state of World of Warcraft in general. They should destroy Azeroth, and they should remake a new game that has a massive graphical upgrade that will last for like 10 years. It's going to be, they should push it to people's current systems, and it should be the best MMO out there. Make an MMO worth paying $15 a month for, that's competitive with today's gaming market that isn't 15 years old. Make it have fresh content. Simplify the game down a lot. Don't give people like a million abilities. Like, you know, just make it easy. Make people have like 10 abilities instead of like 30 or something, or 20, having a huge spell book of spells. Back in vanilla, you had different ranks in your spell book for your different spell skills. When you leveled up, you had to return to town and actually train up the skill. It was just a lot more. It was a lot more grindy, people. And people are going to probably not like that. Like, some of the hardcore players will, like the YouTubers you hear saying how they love it, will do it. But people have orc business now that they're older. When I was a young orc, I was 6 years old. Now I'm 16, guys. You know, I have stuff to do. I have places to be. I have villages to raid. Goblins' heads to smash in. Vanilla will be successful. The release of vanilla will be successful for a time. But it's definitely a step, it seems a step in the wrong direction. Ultimately, I want to see new content. I want to see new games. I want to see a whole graphical upgrade to the whole genre of the game. I want to see a massive new game announcement from Blizzard that this game will be in development for 2 years and replace the current World of Warcraft system. And everybody will be able to start off fresh, essentially, in a new, interesting system, and listen to all the player feedback, generate a new and great game. Like, subscribe, comment. See you in the next video.